microphone. We just need to lower it because she's going to sit. And do you want this chair?
Yeah.
This chair?
I mean, this chair.
Yeah.
Any chair, whatever chair.
Yeah.
One chair.
This chair. Okay. Do you need to put your foot up?
No. Oh, give me a second. Thank you.
Good.
If my dad was here, he'd say, always the center of attention. But I've never done a reading before. Wow, this looks a little bit scary sitting down here. A room full of people. But I just wanted to thank RVK Poetics and April for thinking of me and asking me to do this. And to follow up all these wonderful professional writers is a little bit nerve-wracking. But there's going to be a few things words I'm going to be using in what I've written today. So just a couple of terms for you to know. Savarnas refers to people that belong to a caste system, and Avarnas refers to people that belong outside of the caste system, for instance. I might throw in a couple of words in Kannada, my mother tongue, and then there'll be translations that will follow. Okay. I read what I cannot say. I'm 8. I don't want to go to bed. Neither does my sister. Not when it's obvious there are rumblings of a grand old party outside. My mom whispers at us furiously in that hush now strictness that seems to come naturally to all Indian women. She doesn't care about being kind. She just wants us to sleep now. The thin sheet on the woven straw mat makes us slip and slide, but Mum has an iron grip on our wrists and doesn't want us going out. I'm confused. 1, it's summer vacation, which means there are no rules. 2, we're at my dad's village, which means I'm the star of the show, and I don't want to disappoint my audience. I'm the big city girl, and my dad the little village boy who made it big in the big city. I go to a convent school and speak English. I can do multiplication tables, but more importantly, I speak like a big city girl, and I act like one too. Come night time, the 2 dirt lanes that made up my dad's village are lit up by a milky full moon. The front yard of the hut cleaned and swept with a fluffy broom. Someone would bring a jug of water and sprinkle it on the ground to let the dust settle, creating an outdoor classroom where I held court in all my big city girl glory. I trace alphabets big and small in graceful cursive lines, and have my students trace them obediently. Sometimes the village old folk join in, cracking their knuckles to ward off any evil eye. I knew I was loved, and they heaped it on me openly. So why was I supposed to sit this party out? An aunt wanders into the one private room in the whole hut, where we are fighting sleep and my mum. They whisper to each other, "You should eat by now." My aunt mumbles to my mum. "Are they making dordu?" My mum whispers back angrily, glancing back to see if we'd heard. "Oh, let the men be men," says my aunt. Mum is not comforted by this. There's a lot of grumbling about how inappropriate and unwanted this is, how reckless the whole thing. I'm not comforted either, as it's obvious there's something forbidden about the night, which unsurprisingly made this even more tempting. For years I revisit the memory occasionally, toying with the possibilities of all that I missed out that night, but I understood enough to not ask questions. Only in my 30s, here in Iceland, when reading about the rampant lynchings in broad daylight in modern-day India of the 2014s, does it dawn on me that Dordudu, meaning the big one, was code for beef. It's only then that I realized that my extended family ate beef, to be cooked in the dark while the world slept, to be devoured in silence amongst comrades who won't out you, even as your wives shook their heads in disgust and anger, and the kids clueless about clandestine cattle. It is much later than 2014 when I learned that the 2-lane little village my dad is from is actually a big village. Those 2 lanes were simply where the Dalits were allowed, at the very fringes, cut off from the main village. Suddenly, the long walk to get to the village, through narrow paths that cut through farms they tilled but didn't own, known only to the people who lived there, made sense. There simply were no roads to reach the neighborhood. It made sense they had their own temple, own well, own store. Their own school, however, didn't have their own teachers, which explains why my father paid fees in full but was made to stand outside the classroom eavesdropping on lessons rightfully his. The very geometry of space, physical, spiritual, and the afterlife, that's how powerful Hinduism is dictated by caste. It defines pleasure, pain, desire, and who gets what and to what degree. It defines play, as my sister and I learned, even when we didn't know what the lesson was, except to hide. When we played outside, we were not supposed to take out our favorite toy, a bust of a man in a blue suit, red tie, glasses on, painted onto a thin timber cutout. He was usually the stand-in man for all our imaginary adventures, the husband that went out while we pretend cooked, or pretend taught him in our pretend classrooms, or pretend he was our baby and put him down for a pretend nap. You have so many toys, but this is the one you choose to take out, my mom would yell at us when we caught. In all our pretend games, we didn't know that we were living a pretend life, and outing ourselves with a flimsy wooden bust of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was not on the bingo card of our urban Bangalore life. Fear of being outed kept both caste and cow out of our home. Little has changed as even my husband hesitates to put up a picture of Ambedkar in our studio in India for fear of driving away clients. For over 3,000 years now, India has actively engaged in a carefully calibrated social division that at some point was based on occupation, but quickly became a rigid structure of people, drawing strict boundaries of do's and don'ts, and thereby codifying the haves and have-nots. Our caste system has 4 broad categories: the Brahmins were the priests, the Kshatriyas the warriors, the Vaishyas the traders, and the Shudras the service caste. Where do Dalits land in this? We are so nichar in the nichu, or vermins amongst vermins, that we were considered outside of the caste system, or the untouchables. The horrid beauty of the system is that it does 2 things. 1, caste is by birth. 2, you can change your caste by doing enough good deeds in this janma, or lifetime, to earn the right in your next one to be of a higher caste. And if you truly made it, and you were a virtuous woman from a virtuous caste, you'd be a man. The ultimate jackpot of purity, a foolproof system of chaos and control that eradicated social mobility and ensured continuity while sidestepping accountability and held you responsible for how terrible your life was, if only you'd done better in your previous life. If you walk anywhere in India, you'll see veg, non-veg, and pure vegetarian splashed everywhere. Restaurant hoardings, signs for rentals, matrimonial ads in the classified section of newspapers to the internet. Pure vegetarian. Often an indication of Brahmin cooks in the kitchen to cater to a specific taste distilled through caste. Caste is an effective sieve, putting any Shinwa to shame, sifting as it does the impurities of meat, eggs, onions, garlic, and most importantly, avarna presence. It is so insidious and effective that one cannot untangle what is caste and what is culture in India. It is not until I married my Icelandic husband that I learned that Adi Dravida, the community that I belong to, simply means ancient Dravidians, custodians of the land, the ones who have always been here. And something shifts in me from shame to pride. It always pays to marry a nerd. To be Dalit is to be a light traveler, both as shadow as well as weight, to remain visibly invisible, and with just enough bearing to keep you grounded, yet light enough to take off when need be, to safety. It is to be both an instigator and investigator, a weaver of tapestries woven from absence, longing, rage, and awe. While Savarnas have roadmaps charted over millennia with codified rituals, co-opted and mainstreamed as the definitive norm, Avarnas are figuring out the spectrum of survival. Safety is afforded by cloaking ourselves in veils of acceptable charades, the rough edges not quite sitting well on us, like the t-shirt tag that pokes the back of your neck, even as everyone compliments you on how good you look. Sheltered by my parents' gamble to keep caste off the table, I grew up in a Brahmin stronghold, oblivious to every caste marker, moving in and out of spaces with discernible ease, as I had the brains and skills that fooled everyone, because someone like me simply couldn't be a Dalit. I was definitely not a Brahmin, but most definitely not a Dalit. I was protected by tropes of my own people, that we were a monolith of dark-skinned, dirty, illiterate, poor people, without merit. And so we fraternized, each relying on the discretion of the other, them by their inability to look through me and their own stereotypes, and me trusting my outperforming worldliness to be my safekeep. But paper palaces are flimsy, waiting for the right light to reveal just how thin the walls are. When I sat down for a banana leaf meal with a Brahmin boy once stated, the dining room fell into an uncomfortable silence when I'd enthusiastically made a cultural faux pas of starting to eat in the wrong order of things. If you are an outsider, anyone paying attention will notice. The only way to look like you belong is to actually belong. Paper palaces are also heavy, flimsy as they are. Without the scaffolding of the stories of our ancestors, you swim in endless deep waters, alone. When will I outrun imposed imposter syndrome? What level of perfection and knowledge is enough to be accepted? At the gates of every new community you're waiting to be led into, your expertise is on the line, regardless of how plebeian your audience. Readers expect me to be an expert on potatoes from across the continent of Europe, even as they lambast me that India is all about curry in the same breath. So much to unpack, so little time. Mediocrity is the luxury extended to those that already belong. When led in grudgingly, you must prove beyond a doubt that you're capable of expertise and more. When you grow up devoid of dignity, taste-making is a dangerous excursion. I ask myself if my relentless pursuit of knowledge is in fact to better myself or to distance myself from my own plebeian roots. The grief of growing up in absence is a unique one. There are islands of blankness you have no names or shapes for. I devour Dalit writing today, wherever I can find it, follow artists while dreaming of one day supporting their work, and I'm sick to my stomach with both shame and envy. Shame that I felt guilty about the hardship I was sheltered from, envy that they could access channels to Dalit culture that I'm still clueless about. I'm envious that Shahu Patole wrote a whole book called Dalit Kitchens of Marathwada. My first realization that Dalit food is as diverse a cuisine as other Savarna cuisines. I see the whitewashing my parents went through in order to survive. I also see that didn't stop them from giving me the keys to joy through food and a thirst for knowledge, even if it was meant to cement my legitimacy. Of slaughtering a chicken and eating the juiciest, fattiest bits first. Of understanding that pain and pleasure are often side by side, one elevating the other. Pleasure paths in architecture are defined as informal, organic, unplanned trails created by people through repeated use. As an architect, I'm by now wired to draw my own hypothesis that every such path tread by people is almost always a hypotenuse to any two paths. The designer may have laid out a strict framework for us to navigate, but the human need to exercise agency is quickly revealed as evidenced by parks everywhere. When confronted with the theme for this reading, I was torn between two thoughts. Are pleasure paths about the destination or the journey? You'd think that as an oppressed people, we would crave safety and take the long-winded way. So could pleasure paths be our desire paths? I know, though, that the desire path is my path, my urgency to make up for lost time, chasing destinations with little regard for safety. But I had to breathe as I realized that this life I live is the first such path in my lineage. Those before me built in the dark, so I could dream up desire paths after desire paths, and that perhaps it is both a destination and a journey. Thank you.